Hello and welcome to Taskmaster Talks with Kevin Sullivan. I'm your host, JP John Paz. Of course, with me, the star of the show, the former WCW and ECW World Tag Team Champion, the greatest mind and booker ever in the history of the business, the Games Master, the Taskmaster, the devil himself, Mr. Kevin Sullivan. Kevin, how you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great, JP. Very good. I'm visiting my daughter in Florida, so having a good time.
What do you think about CM Punk, the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, AEW, the backstage altercation? Wanted to get your opinions on that because this is one of the craziest stories that we've heard in a while. I know we've heard talk about Vince retiring. That was crazy, but here's another crazy story from AEW.
Uh, it certainly is. And I mean, you hear two completely different sides of the story. I can't understand how this happened. At first, I thought it was could be a work, but it wasn't. Uh, I don't, obviously, there's been some hurt feelings and bad blood there for a while. And, you know, where did they go to fix the pieces up back together? And isn't Punk hurt now that he's going to be out for an extended period of time?
Yeah, torn tricep. I believe it was either a torn pec or a torn tricep. He's going to be out for about 8 months.
Wow. Wow. So it's, well, let me ask you, what do you think about it? Because you probably have a better feel for this than I do. But what do you think happened that caused this? Was there some deep underlying heat with somebody somewhere?
It looked like with Adam Page when he made that comment months ago about Punk being a cancer in the locker room, that was never okayed. He didn't know Punk didn't know Page was going to say that, and that kind of opened Pandora's box. Plus, Page and the Young Bucks and those guys are friends with Colt Cabana. Obviously, CM Punk hates Colt Cabana, a lot. I mean, he really just doesn't like the guy, and they've had their history in their past from 10 years ago with WWE and the lawsuit and the podcast and all that stuff. So they're friends with him, and apparently the EVPs and Page were kind of saying like, "Oh, Punk is divisive. He's a cancer. He's the reason why Colt Cabana was not fired, but basically demoted to ROH, and he was no longer in the Dark Order. He wasn't going to be in AEW anymore." And I guess the EVPs kept that rolling, and they must have said something about it, and they were kind of giving Punk not a bad name, but they weren't really very complimentary of Punk, and that got to Punk. He was pissed about it. So not only did he go off on Colt Cabana kind of unwarranted at the press conference, even though nobody mentioned him, he just mentioned him because the guy Nick Houseman used to be friends with him, and Nick Houseman is one of the guys from Wrestling Inc. that covers the press conferences and covers AEW for Wrestling Inc. So it was one of the things where, okay, he saw him and he kind of saw an opportunity to kind of open Pandora's box there and let go of his grievances. And obviously he ripped on Adam Page because Adam Page ripped on him. That was his receipt. But yeah, he kind of really went in on the Bucks and Omega. Some of that was true, some of that's not. Like as far as like what do they really deserve to be EVPs? Like how the hell are they EVPs? But man, that was a crazy way to go about it. Jeez Louise. I mean, he really went in on those guys.
Yeah, and can you bring me up to speed about? I know the rough outlines of Colt Cabana and CM's problems, but can you fill me in? There was a lawsuit because they said that the doctor caused Punk. They There was a defamation lawsuit, right? Where they
Yeah.
said something about the. Okay, bring me up to
Yep.
speed.
So there was they had the podcast when Colt Cabana had his podcast. He had Punk on for an extended period of time. Punk went off a bit on WWE, didn't like it there. He got screwed. But that also he had a staph infection that wasn't treated correctly, and he really mentioned the doctor by name and really going in about how this guy almost killed him. And so the defamation lawsuit came about, and of course Punk and Cabana both got served because he's on his podcast. So Cabana felt like Punk should pay for it because he was the one that was defamating WWE and the doctor, not him. So apparently, Punk said that he was going to take care of the lawsuit but or that they were going to split it. I don't know how it worked out, but basically, I guess Punk paid for most of the lawsuit. Punk says he has an email from Colt Cabana where it says Cabana will split it with him, and they both can, pay their side, pay half and half, I guess, of whatever the legal fees were going to be from the lawsuit. And I guess Punk ended up paying more than he thought he should have. But that was basically the crux of it. And that Punk was saying that he was paying all of Cabana's bills, and that Cabana share. I don't know why this matters, but he shares a bank account with his mother, and that's kind of when he kind of, I guess, took off. And they didn't want to. I guess they wanted to settle rather than have a lawsuit against each other.
Okay. And then they had been friends up until then, and then they stopped being friends, I imagine, right?
Yep. So I guess Cabana sued Punk, and Punk countersued him. Then they had in Discovery opened up the books. Colt Cabana shared a bank account with his mother. I kind of don't know the relevance of why. I guess he's trying to make fun of him, but maybe Cabana's supporting his mother. Maybe that, you know what I mean? It could be one of those things. Maybe that's why they have a joint
Right.
bank account. But Punk was trying to make it seem like it was a real bad thing, but he's kind of trying to make it seem like that's why they kind of tried to settle, because he didn't want his mother getting involved and having to pay for the fees as well. So that's kind of the crux of it.
And they did win that lawsuit, didn't they?
Yeah. I don't think
They
that,
didn't have to pay the
no,
doctor,
but there were
did
still
they?
all the legal fees, though. I think that it was a substantial amount of legal fees too. So Punk,
Right, right.
I guess Punk ended up paying the legal fees, and then he was saying he was paying for other bills. I don't know what it was of Colt Cabana, but he claims he's paying for some other stuff for him. I don't know, and I don't care about that
Okay.
stuff, but that was a big crux of the issue.
But why did he bring that up? Is there a reason why he brought that up at the press conference?
It honestly seemed like
Was
it was just
something
like
asked?
it honestly seemed like it was just weighing on his mind, but a lot of people in the media, because he called out, several people in the, well, basically said wrestling journalists, media, dirt sheets, you guys been covering the story wrong. I've been sitting on this for so long. I didn't want to seem like I was being so defensive, but I haven't said anything. So something must have set him off that he wanted to do it. Dave Meltzer has said he pre-thought it out and that he knew ahead of time that he was going to say it. But it seemed like the EVPs were kind of, and I guess maybe feeding some information to the dirt sheets, and dirt sheets were quote unquote getting it wrong, that he was the one responsible for Cabana's demotion in AEW, when he says he has nothing to fucking do with him for years.
Okay, so somebody was feeding the wrestling journalists some crap. They were putting it out there, and that's why he wanted to clear the air,
Yep, and
right?
that the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega weren't defending him, and they weren't saying anything positive about him. So it was almost as if like, oh yeah, Punk is this part of the locker room, we're on this side of the locker room. And I've heard through the grapevine from a few people that work there, and obviously some of the wrestling journalists and media and dirt sheets covered as well, that Punk and Omega, don't like each other, and they're kind of separated, and that Omega felt slighted that Punk was being treated like Tony Khan's favorite pet, and he used to be his favorite pet, and he got pushed down the pecking order, even though he's an EVP. The Young Bucks not happy they were pushed down the pecking order, because now it's Punk, the alpha male, came in and kind of took over. So don't know if there's 100% truth to that, but there does seem like there's a little modicum of truth to that for sure.
Okay. But boy, it set them back having that bullshit because they might could have salvaged it and turned it into a storyline, but obviously there's not going to be any salvation because Punk's going to be out for 8 months, and I don't know, and you probably don't have any idea either. What are they going to do with the other guys? I noticed they took the belts off them. Where do they go from here? Where those guys go from here? How do you suspend the executives in your office?
Crazy. Yeah, they're suspended. So I don't know for how long or what's going to happen. Meltzer reported it's going to be a few weeks until the quote unquote investigation is over, but they're suspended for a few weeks. Pat Buck, Christopher Daniels, Michael Nakazawa, Brendan Cutler, Ace Steel, all suspended. Ace Steel supposedly might be fired because he bit Kenny Omega and he threw a chair at Nick Jackson, one of the Young Bucks, and knocked him out. CM Punk threw a punch at one of the Young Bucks. So I don't know. Crazy, but they're suspended.
What did Pat get suspended for?
So because he was involved, they're saying anybody that was involved has to be suspended until the investigation is over with. So it seems like just like a precautionary thing that everybody is suspended. That any, he was trying to break it up. So anybody that had anything to do with it is suspended, which is I don't know, kind of silly, I guess, because they didn't break it up. I mean, I wouldn't have suspended those guys. Like, Christopher Daniels is one of the head of the talent relations. He got suspended because he was trying to break it up. It's kind of crazy.
Oh, that's I'm not sure if he's suspended. He wrestled last night, right?
No, Brian Danielson wrestled last night, but Christopher
Oh,
Daniels is suspended. Yeah,
okay, okay. Uh, boy, it gets more entangled, is what you just said. And they're going to bring in somebody like a master to find out what the problem is and
somebody
the
from their
solution.
legal team. Yeah, somebody from their legal counsel.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay. Well, we're just going to have to sit and wait. I mean, I was a great. It was great to see MJF back. Right? I thought he. I said, what a talented guy this is. He comes out. He's a huge baby face. 4 seconds later, he's a huge heel. He's got a remarkable gift of gab, and I thought he looked physically the best I've ever seen him look. I don't know if it was just the angle they shot him at. Didn't you think he looked terrific? Like he had been training really hard?
yeah, yeah. He looks jacked. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah.
What would you do in this situation? Like, have you ever had to deal with this in WCW? I know obviously Steiner and DDP had their fights, and there's a bunch of backstage fights. But what'd you have to do, and like how would you deal with that?
We never had it. We never went past the locker room, you know. I mean, and I'm sure WWE had the same thing. I mean, the boys policed themselves back in the day, but it never got to this point. Well, I guess it did with Scott one time with the interview with Ric Flair that they weren't even working with one another, and they got the famous interview on Flair. But the boys kind of police themselves. But it's a different time and different era in the political correctness, and you know who knows. I don't think there could be lawsuits involved, but who knows? This is a different time and a different era, right?
Yep. How would you
So,
deal with it? Would you have suspended everybody, or would you make them work together and doing an angle? I know Punk's injured, but hypothetically speaking,
well, I think, I mean, you lost, or you lost Punk, you lost Omega, you lost the Young Bucks, you lost Christopher Daniels. Uh, you lost the whole card there. I think they would have a great rating from last night. People were tuning in to hear what was going on, and I don't think they actually heard what they thought they were going to hear. And I'm sure leaving those, taking the belts off the three-man tag team, that's a little confusing if you don't tell me why. Do you know what I'm saying? They really didn't tell why, did they? Or I just missed it.
no, nope.
So, I mean, I think, but again, it's a different time and a different era. And I'm sure the reason why they're doing this, their legal staff told them this is what you have to do. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm sure the legal staff stepped in.
Yep. So
Yeah.
Dave Meltzer, wrestling reporter, said that Tony Khan's announcement at the start of the show was very vague on purpose. He included everything he could say from a legal point of view, as there's a legal investigation running in for the company for this altercation. So I guess it makes sense why it was so vague. But if you're a casual viewer, you're like, okay, why is Punk not the champion? Are we hurt, or why is it vacant? And then like the trios title, you would be very curious. But that was what Meltzer had reported. Obviously, he's very close to that situation, so he knows. But I guess he couldn't get into it any further. I don't know. Maybe he could have said something, but I guess that's all he could
Maybe
say.
they put a gag order on him and said, "Don't say anything pertaining to that." I mean, that's the other thing about us wrestling fans. We jump to conclusions and we jump to what they should do, not knowing the full ramifications of the legal end, what you could say and what you can't say. I mean, you know, you're talking about millions and millions of dollars by saying the wrong word in today's uh, environment. So maybe, I'm sure Tony's a smart guy. I'm sure he didn't just go any further because he was told legally not to.
Had to be, because watching that, everyone was so excited. Like, okay, what is he going to say? What is he going to do? And he literally said nothing. You know what I mean? Other than they're going to create a tournament for a new champion.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think, well, we're definitely going to be able to watch it play out in real time.
For sure. But now, like with Punk, would you fire him? Would you suspend him? Yeah, you can't kind of do anything because he's injured. But what would you do with Punk?
I would hope that cooler heads would prevail and they would sit down and work this out, because you don't want to lose any of those guys. The they're the basic of your company. I mean, they're all in top spots. They're all guys that were selected by Tony Khan because they hadn't gotten exposed, basically, except for Punk, the guys we mentioned. Uh, you know, I don't remember the brothers going to WWE. I don't think Omega was ever in WWE. I don't think Hangman Page was ever in WWE. And Punk had been retired for 7 years. So he brought back basically fresh faces, right? Not
Hmm.
knocking the guys they brought in, because the guys they brought in, Brian Danielson and Billy Gunn and Milo, they're great additions, but those other guys were there from the start, right? So
Yep.
I'm sure they could sit them down and cooler heads would prevail. If not, then the next step is telling them, if you can't, it's your company. If you can't get along, we need to make a decision to go separate ways in the best way we can.
And their big match that I think that you could have made off of that, or even just in general, was Kenny Omega versus CM Punk. Like that's the dream match,
Oh,
quote unquote, that you'd want to make.
yeah, absolutely. And especially, that's what I said when it first happened. And, you would think you could come out of this with a great storyline, and maybe you have a snippet of somebody to, you could turn it into work. Someone has a camera and took some snippets of this fight actually going on, and you don't show it, but you play the audio. There's so many things you could have done. And I think it would have drawn, and it would definitely have got you a huge rating. But now, you got to go back to the drawing board and come up with something pretty clever because you're going into Arthur Ashe Stadium not fully loaded with your number one talents, right?
Yeah. Yep. No Punk, no
That's the
Omega,
thing
no
I think
Bucks.
about.
Yeah.
That's the thing I think about. You going into WWE. It's Hunter's ball now. Going into Hunter's backyard without all your talent. You better figure something out pretty quick.
What would you do with the EVPs? Would you pull the EVP, from them, considering, their executives getting backstage fights, or no?
I think what's going to happen is the legal department is going to tell them what they got to do. I think that's why that they haven't really told you what they're going to do. I think the legal department is probably taking this over from Tony, is going to direct them what they're going to do. And I think that's what's taking them some time. I think Tony's a bright guy. I think he'd be on top of this and would have made a decision. But I think the legal department, we never got into anything like this. Uh, a little bit with Orndorff and Vader, but we
Right.
never got anything like this. And that's when the little bit of the lawyer stuff we heard about from the North Tower. But I'm sure they jumped all over this because, again, I'm just uh, repeating myself to nausea. Uh, it's a different time and a different era, and people sue back and forth for anything. So I'm sure Tony wanted to get this clear, but the lawyer stepped in and said, "We got to really investigate before we say anything."
Do you think Punk put Tony in like a bad spot, just as far as the press conference, because he had to
Absolutely.
almost sit there and just why this guy went off on everybody?
Well, I didn't see the press conference, but just hearing it about it, and again, I didn't see it, so this is just me surmising what happened. He put Tony in a horrible position, and I wonder if that someone buzzed. Maybe I'm going into conspiracy theories bullshit right now, but what if someone buzzed Punk about it and said, "Oh, did you hear what they just said?" You know what I mean? And maybe that's why he went off. I don't know, but he put Tony in a tough situation. And what was Tony going to do? Say, "Oh, that's enough"? I mean, here's your world champion. He just won the belt. He's injured. A lot of things are going through Tony's mind, and he's probably saying, "Oh, please, Punk, please stop talking." And he doesn't want to talk over him because it might incite him more. Who knows? I mean, he was in a very, very, very difficult position listening to this. That's for sure.
To me, some of the faces, I don't know if I guess you didn't see, but some of the faces Tony was making, you could tell it's like he was not perturbed, but he was like, "Uh-oh, oh shit." Like just you could tell by his faces and his body language, like Punk was going off and he was almost like, "Oh shit, I got to step in and say something, but I can't step in and say something." Like he was in a precarious position, but his face, it's go back and if you can watch it. It's so funny his reaction because his reaction is almost like what we're thinking watching it. It's like, "Oh no, oh no."
So obviously, what I said was probably correct. He put Tony in a horrible position. And maybe, I don't know how it started, but maybe it started out slow. And then sometimes we can work ourselves into a huge shoot. I mean, there's a lot of times you're saying something to somebody and you're saying to yourself, as you're saying it, don't say that. Shut your mouth, and it's coming out of your mouth anyway. So I'm sure Tony was trying to protect the company and protect Punk at the same time because it seems to me that Punk was the darling of the internet, but after this, it seems that a lot of people have turned on him and saying, he was way out of line, blah, blah, blah. Am I right on that assumption, you think?
Yeah, I've noticed that he was the darling for sure. Selling 100,000 T-shirts in a week, and now when he came out last, there was some. This is obviously pre-press conference, but there was a little bit of booze because he was being supposed to be a little divisive backstage. Who knows what's true and what's not? But he wasn't as favorably cheered as he normally was. Like MJF, the heel, was getting cheered a lot in his return.
Yeah, and rightfully so. Rightfully so. I mean, I think they really need to sit down and have a very, very intricate plan for MJF. I haven't seen anybody in years. The last time I've seen anybody go from a babyface to a heel in 4 seconds was Flair, but he did it with Steamboat and Terry Funk, and Terry put him through a table. Or not through it, but he pile drived him on the table, almost broke his neck.
Yep.
I mean, MJF came out and the people went bananas, and he was a stone cold baby face. Then about Allen, the greatest quarterback of all times, then he sucks. But I noticed, even though they were booing him, did you see this, or is it my imagination? They were booing him and jeering him, but there was a smile on their face.
Yeah.
They were so happy he's back. So I
Definitely.
think they got something very special there. And I'm sure they rushed them back because of what happened. And I'm sure this has long reaching uh, problems for AEW because they brought him back and they needed to because they needed to cover up what's gone on. But I'm sure they hadn't gotten all the plans down to who he's going to work with and which they're going to go. And it was probably somebody that's been fired or suspended or going to be looked at differently for a while. I mean, they got a really, really got a gold mine with him. And I hope that they get a long range program for him because he, unlike a lot of people, he was off for a long time, but he hit the gym and his interviews were very entertaining last night. When I said interviews, he went from a babyface to a heel. He was great, and I hope it's going to be interesting to see what he does because he's going to be great no matter what he does. But I hope they have something ready for him.
Me too. He's a huge star for them and a huge star in the
Yeah,
business. What do you
right.
think about Punker? What do you do with him? Do you let him come back when he comes back from injury? Do you make him apologize? What do you do with Punk?
Well, we don't know the whole story yet, right? We only hear different. We hear two sides of the fight story, and they're both completely different, right?
Yep.
Again, I think they're going to have to listen to the legal department. And the other thing is Punk wanting to come back? After this, will he want to come back? I mean, you're losing a guy that became the focal point. He's going to be out for, you said, 8 months.
That's the rumor. Yep.
Okay, if he's out for 8 months, it's, things will, time heals wounds. Maybe, they have a few meetings and they bring them together and they try to work this thing out. But you can't have another one of these incidents amongst them again. Or, you know, the network itself may look at this and be appalled.
I could definitely see that because it doesn't seem like something that the network would like seeing, especially it's not a work, obviously, it's a shoot. So, I mean, they're not going to like that. Fight at the workplace, workplace violence, guy got knocked out, guy got bit. I mean, executive starting a fight. I mean, none of it sounds good at all to the network.
No, I mean, and you just hit on something. Where is human resources in this? A bite, a chair being thrown. I mean, we're talking about I could have went out, right? Busted nose, split head, concussions, bite marks, drawn blood. Uh, I heard that one of them got knocked out, hit the floor. I'm sure there's two thoughts of this. One of the thoughts for the executives on Turner would be, oh, wrestlers being wrestlers. The other one saying, what have we got ourselves into? And I think that was the difference when you brought up Page and Steiner, that it was hush hushed and covered and policed by the wrestlers themselves. It wasn't like a gang warfare. It was like this was the Crips and the Bloods, you know. This was completely different.
So AEW is going to be pretty interesting going forward. We'll see, what happens with Punk, Omega, and the Bucks, and the rest of AEW and Tony Khan kind of going forward.
Yeah. I certainly hope and I know they will get their act together. They've come on so strong and from starting from scratch. I'm sure they're going to get everything together, and it'll be interesting to watch them put these pieces back together. Good luck to them.
All right. And the topic of today is WCW Fall Brawl 1995. It's a big one. It's September 17th, 1995, Asheville, North Carolina, Asheville Civic Center. The attendance 6,600. The tagline, let the games begin. And of course, the pay per view buys, which was only 95K, which is surprising for a Hogan show that it only did 95,000K. It's got to be a little disappointing.
Yeah, I don't think that the dungeon was strong enough to draw against them. I mean, we're going a different direction, making it a lot more real and legitimate, and not knocking any of the guys in the dungeon. Or I've told you a bunch of this was to turn Hogan heel and for him to be comfortable with the guys he was working with, and that he do the right thing and turn heel. But we weren't nowhere near anywhere close to the Horsemen or anybody else at that point. So it was to get Hogan a win.
Yeah, I think that's the whole thing. Yes, it's Hogan, but maybe people weren't that into the dungeon and that excited about that potential matchup.
Right. I think that's exactly what it was. And it was also to show Hulk that, you know, what he drew with in New York wasn't going to draw in Atlanta.
Right. Definitely. Definitely. Now, originally on the team was supposed to be Big Van Vader, and they say Vader has now gone AWOL. But we know, as we kind of been talking about before, we've talked about this. Vader is gone, got fired because of the Paul Orndorff incident, right? Because the backstage fight.
Right, right. And I mean, here's the crazy thing, JP. Vader got fired because he hit an employee. Uh, this is maybe just opened up something that we're thinking about. That fight with Orndorff and Vader was policed by the guys. I was there. I actually saw the whole thing. But he had hit an employee. So maybe there's going to be something in the loss if they have a lawsuit about that. an employee being hit, because they're not just independent contractors, are they? The Bucks and Omega,
Nope. EVPs.
they're employees. What? And they're
EVPs. Yeah, they're employees.
employees, right?
Yep.
So, okay.
What did happen, really, though, with Vader and Orndorff? Who instigated it? Was it Vader?
I know the whole situation. I hear people tell you that they saw it and they weren't there. Okay. Uh, I guess Vader had gone to get some publicity pictures done. Okay. I didn't know anything about it. And we were doing promos at the center stage. And the thing was, we were running very close to for the, the production people got to have their dinner before the show, and it was running very late. And Keith Mitchell said to me, you got 15 minutes to get these done because I got a call for dinner. So I said to Paul, will you go get Vader and tell him I need him bad? Paul goes.
Oh, you're on mute. Oh, Kev, you're on mute.
I'm not now.
Nope.
Am I?
Nope. You were saying Paul. Then
Can
Paul
you hear
said,
me?
"Yep."
I said, Paul, I need him now. So he said, I'll go get him. He comes back and says, he said he'll be here when he's ready. I said, Paul, I need him right now. I got 10 minutes. Get these done. Paul goes off, and I said, I better go out and do this myself. I'm walking down the hallway, and in center stage, the hallway, one's on the right-hand side if you walked in with the dressing room. So on the other side, with the stairs going down in a diagonal, almost like a pyramid, right? I'm walking down there, and I see Paul. He's got his shorts on and flip-flops. These people that say he wasn't in flip-flops are full of shit. I see them talking, and I'm getting closer, and I see Vader look away, and Paul looks to where Vader's looking. Vader opened, bear pawed him in the face, dropped him. Paul started to go down. He front face locked him and shoved him into a box where they had like a bunch of tools and different things. Well, I know Paul. I knew Paul very well. When they pulled him apart, I did something I've never told people about. I knew Paul would have killed himself if that fight ended that way. I said to some of the guys, let him go. And I told them to get their hands off of Paul. I didn't think he would jump on Vader, but they went at it. And Vader went for him. And he hit Vader with one punch with that bad arm perfectly on the jaw. It dropped him and kicked Vader in the head. Vader's head went back, and his head actually touched his boots. He was cut in the face, bleeding badly. I got to give Leon credit. Everybody separated them, pushed them, Paul into a dressing room. Vader came in charge and said, let's go. He wasn't going to quit. And then Ming stepped in to both of them and said, that's it, no more. And they stopped. But that was a brutal fight. But Paul got the best of him. But Vader wasn't going to back down. And I mean, it was crazy. But that's why he got fired, because if there was just wrestlers, he wouldn't have got fired. He hit an employee. So maybe we've been wondering what's going to go on. Maybe there's something there that we don't know of.
So really, let's say Vader got in a backstage fight with somebody else, and that
Nothing would have
happened.
happened. Nothing would have happened.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah. I mean,
Changed the course. Yeah.
I saw Buzz getting a couple of squabbles with guys. Uh, don't want to say one of the guys' names. He's still doing some stuff. They got in a little squabble, and Buzz suplexed him, and I had to pull Buzz off of him. But everybody saw it. Uh, but nothing happened. And then Steiner and Page, right?
Yep.
So there was other ones.
To me, I mean, it kind of doesn't work out for Vader. I guess kind of does because he gets to go to WWF and almost be a big star, but obviously politics and other things reared his ugly head, and Vince didn't book him the way he should have been booked. But man, he was booked so much better in WCW. Kind of stunk at this point because it would have been awesome to see Vader in the Nitro era and then eventually Vader in the NWO feud. I mean, that would have been awesome. So you got some good matches,
Yeah, he really did.
but you got screwed over in WCW.
Yeah, but they were very, very leery about that, about someone hitting an employee, because there was a few complaints where somebody yelled at the production people. Do you know what I mean? So they were. I mean, they were on. I'm surprised that there wasn't more problems. The guys, I got to tip my hat to them. Most of them were very, and ladies too. Most of them were very, very good with the production people.
Did Paul get in any sort of trouble?
Uh, no, because he was slapped first, and Paul was just doing his job, trying to get him up there. I gotta give Vader, Vader, maybe he's running around all day, but he knew he had to do the promo. You know what I mean? He knew it wasn't that he didn't know the production was going to shut off. Do you know what I mean? And we wouldn't have got his interview in. Then, if it didn't draw, he would have said, "Well, I never got an interview." So,
True. Very true.
yeah.
So let's run through the Fall Brawl 95 card. First, I'll just talk about I'll quickly go through the pre-show. Big Bubba Rogers defeated Mark Thorne in 1 minute. Disco Inferno defeated Joey Maggs in 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Alex Wright defeated Eddie Guerrero, excuse me, wrestled Eddie Guerrero to a no contest, ended in about 7 minutes. The American Males, Mark Bagwell and Scotty Riggs, defeated the Nasty Boys, Knobs and Sags, in about 4 minutes and 15 seconds. So that's just quickly the main events show, the pre-show before the big card starts. So the big card starts, and they have the video package, and you're teasing a guy that we don't know his name. We don't know who he is, but you're teasing the Giant. What did you think of the Giant? And are we supposed to believe this is Andre the Giant's son?
Well, that's what Hogan wanted. Just like the Renegade was going to be a cousin of Ultimate Warrior. He was comfortable with working with guys that he had worked with. If he didn't work with them, he wanted some connection to the New York guys.
That same formula he wanted. He thought it could
Yeah,
work again.
yeah, yeah,
Man, the Renegade, just thinking about it, it's like everybody immediately. I mean, I'm 13 years old at this point, and all my friends was like, "Oh, what a rip off the Warrior! I hate this guy." Like it worked the exact opposite the way he thought it was going to work.
yeah. And it wasn't fair to that kid. You know what I mean? He thought he was going to be a big star, and you know, when they beat him and Jimmy wiping the paint off, he just plain old Rick. Uh, you know, that was tough for the kid's psyche.
Is it true that the Ultimate Warrior had his logo trademarked so that you guys couldn't, nobody could use that trademark face paint because it's his logo? That's the Warrior logo. Is that true? Because there was always the weird face painted on Renegade's face.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was. I mean, I didn't go and check it, but I had heard it, and I'm sure it was. I mean, he changed the name to Warrior, right?
Yeah.
So I'm sure it was. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know he had
Or
that logo is trademarked or whatever too. So
yeah.
his face paint is actually his logo. So it's pretty smart if you think about it. Like you can't copy his face paint because you can't copy his logo.
Right. He was a smart businessman, that's for sure.
I never liked the R. It just looked weird. His face paint. I know, and he's not as big as the Warrior. First of all, I don't even think he's as tall, but he's skinnier. He's in good shape, but he's skinnier than the Warrior. It just didn't work out.
No, no. It's
Who
too
picked
bad
him?
for him.
Who handpicked him? Hogan?
Either Hogan or Jimmy. Yeah.
Did you like that idea, or are you just going along with it?
No, I did. I had to go along with it. I mean, it was his creation, but I mean, I didn't. I thought it was a complete rip off. But in the long run, it might have been Hogan egg playing to Warrior's ego to get him to come back to wrestle. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? He might have just irked him enough that he poked the bear enough times that he came back to wrestle.
Right. Absolutely. Or he could have came back and beat the Renegade, and then it's Hogan Warrior again. Yeah, definitely. With the
Yeah,
Giant,
yeah.
though, did you like the Andre the Giant stuff? The shirt, that the shirt smells like him. Did you like that
No,
stuff?
no, not at all. Not at all. But, he was trying to make, and I understand that was my take on it. But Hogan's take, and I understand this too, that he's going to wrestle a kid that's green as grass, never been in a match. He's trying to give the kid as much ammunition as he can have. And on his side of the coin, there were some people that believed he was Andre's son. So I understand why Hogan did it. Did I like it? No. But I understand why he did it.
To me, it's like I don't remember him having a son. I know he had a daughter. I don't know about him having a son, as far as Andre is concerned. So it was a little bit like, all right, but then you see the guy, you're like, wow, this guy is a physical like freak. Like, what a beast this guy is.
Right, right.
Did you have any help or any part in recruiting him at all, or that was all Hogan?
No, that was all Hogan. Hogan saw him at a basketball game or something. And that was it.
That's what I've heard as well. That it was some celebrity basketball game or something, and he saw him and was just mesmerized by his size, and it's like I could I could make money with this guy.
Right, right. I heard the same thing.
What did you think though? Was he too green, or did you think he was ready for a Hogan feud?
Well, I knew this that uh, Buddy Lee Parker and
Oh, you're muted again. You're on mute.
I got you. So Buddy Lee Parker and Orndorff and Mike Graham could get him ready because it was going to be a basic match. I knew that. So I wasn't that worried about that. And he worked his ass off, Paul, to get ready to work with Hogan.
With him though, it's almost like okay, you're the Giant, you're huge, you're a big guy, but it's almost like too much too soon. It's like you're going to feud with the greatest wrestler of all time immediately. Like I don't know. To me, that sounds like I don't know. It's a little bit like jumping straight into the fire. Like, is that the right thing to do with a guy that young in the business?
Yeah, because if you put him out with anybody else, he's going to be exposed. Hogan knew how to handle that. I don't usually like it, but because Paul being so big, I wouldn't think that anybody else could have the mentality to carry him to what it was. And knowing, I said I didn't like it, but knowing Hogan's mindset was he was going to get the most out of this he possibly could and didn't want any mistakes along the way. If there was a mistake going to be made, it was going to be made by Hulk.
So, as far as the show is concerned, the first real match of the show, Johnny B. Bad defeats Brian Pillman in a singles match to determine the number one contender for the WCW United States Championship. The match goes 29 minutes and 15 seconds. Johnny B. Bad gets the win. This match is awesome. Talking about holding up or whatever you want to say, this match is great.
Yeah, it was very good. I remember it was very good. That's why I wish Johnny had never had that gimmick.
What do you mean?
It was too comical. It was too comical. If he had been and gone into his history about being a boxer and what an athlete he was in the long run, it might have helped him in the short run, but in the long run, he would have really been a huge star, I believe.
So he's on the record, Johnny B. Bad, is saying that nobody really thought that this match was going to be that good. And I think Pillman a while ago, I mean, many moons ago, because he died in 1997, but I remember he was not felt slighted, but he was almost like taking it as a challenge that he was getting a half hour with Johnny B. Bad and like, yo, let's see what you could do. And Johnny B. Bad was on record as saying they almost thought like this was a real test, like just throw him out there for a half hour. That you guys almost not didn't have faith in him, but it's almost like let's see how you guys do, like throwing them right to the fire. 30 minutes opener.
I didn't look at it that way. You didn't want to stink out your pay per view, that's for sure.
Right, absolutely.
I knew that these guys were capable of going 30 minutes, and I thought it would elevate both of them.
Did you think it was going to be that good? Like, I mean, even Meltzer, I know it doesn't quite matter to some people, but like he even was like, "Oh, how great the match was," because yeah, he'll be a stickler on some of the WCW stuff, as you see if you really look at the ratings. I mean, he really pumped up this match.
Well, they're two athletic looking guys. They could move, they were fast, and they knew the basics. I knew it was going to be this. I knew it was going to be good. I don't think anybody thought it was going to be that great. They knew it was going to be good. Knew it was going to be very good, but that was a very great match.
Why a half hour? Like, why did you guys decide to give him that much time?
Because you know, when I talk about patterns, usually we started with the fast-paced matches that went about 15, right?
Yep.
So now we're giving 30 minutes of a different type of match, but it's still going to be fast working.
Great back and forth match. I mean, both men showed the high flying arsenal. I mean, they showed agility. They showed so much athleticism in the match. I mean, just really, really great match. And I don't know, maybe surprised some people. Really, I think Johnny B. Bad or Mark Mero has gone on record saying probably surprised some people, but it really was like almost like a stamp of like approval on these guys, saying like, "Holy shit, Pillman's great. Whoa, that Johnny B. Bad's not too bad either." You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think it showed people that Pillman was able to lead a match. Not discounting Johnny, but Pillman was the guy that was leading that match. I think that Brian didn't get his credit till he became the loose cannon. But Mike Graham's right from the first time he laid eyes on Pillman said, "This kid's a star. This kid's got it." He pushed for him. Ric Flair pushed for him. Very hard. Jim Barnett pushed for him. And all three of those guys knew talent, that's for sure.
So the next match up, that's not the last we're going to hear from Pillman, of course, but the next matchup is not a great one. Craig Pittman defeats Cobra in a minute and 20 seconds. Nothing too great, nothing to write at home about here, but how come only a minute and 20 seconds for Sergeant Craig Pitbull Pittman and Cobra?
Not to knock anybody, but we were just coming off that match. I knew you couldn't have much more time with those guys, and it gave the announcers to pump Pillman and Johnny. They weren't going to fall that match.
And it's really interesting
So
because,
let's get Pittman over.
and Pittman
There
comes
was
down
no
the
way
ring
they'd
if you're
fall in that match, and
right.
it only get them in trouble.
And Pittman comes down to the ring in like on the string or
Pittman
whatever. He
comes down the ring. What?
from the ceiling. He came down like an army ranger.
Yeah, yeah. He repels.
Yes,
Yeah, he
yes, pretty
repels down. Yeah.
pretty cool entrance, but kind of like a mid card character. Did you almost think like we should do more with this guy? Were you trying to do more with him? Because that's a pretty grandiose entrance for a guy like that.
He was very green. He was green. I mean, is he going to follow Pillman and Johnny B. Bad? No. So we think we could do something with him. Yeah, we're trying to position him in the best light to do something with him. That's why the entrance, and that's why less than 2 minutes match. But he wasn't ready yet.
So then we have a backstage segment with Mr. Wonderful, Paul Orndorff. Speaking of him, he was questioning himself and asking if he's really Mr. Wonderful anymore. So he is an executive, he is working behind the scenes, but he is also still a competitor. And Gary Spivey, the psychic, shows up in a ridiculous looking outfit, of course, per Gary Spivey. He confronts Paul and he tells him that he's been Mr. Wonderful the whole time. Paul looks in the mirror, repeats it to himself that he is Mr. Wonderful. Paul kisses his arm and he stares into the mirror, and then we go back to the ring. Just a very funny, weird segment. Where did this Gary Spivey stuff come from?
That came from the North Tower somewhere down the line. They got involved in him and saddled less with him. And Paul needed something, so we took one of the hottest hitting heels of all times and gave him a comical character, and Paul made it work.
So funny. And remember, not that long ago, I interviewed Gary Spivey, and they talked about it. He loved it. He loved wrestling. He loved Hulk. He loved Orndorff. He loved all that stuff.
Yeah, he was easy to work with.
So then we have DDP Diamond Dallas Page with the Diamond Doll and Max Muscle defeated the Renegade to win the WCW Television Championship in about 8 minutes. Not terrible here, but DDP had to carry Renegade. I mean, there's no secret about that. What do you think about that? DDP goes over Renegade, wins the TV title. I guess it's kind of like a deep push there for the Renegade, who was beat Arn for the TV title and was on a bit of a roll.
Yeah, it was giving Page a push now. He's going to get a push.
Was this like marking the end of the push for the Renegade?
Yes. Because I think we had in the back of our minds that Warrior is coming.
So with that, DDP, did you like where he was at this point? Because I know we joked around about this before about how many gimmicks he had. Not only did he
No,
do
I
the,
didn't
the
like it.
gum and the glasses, but he had Diamond Doll and Max Muscle.
Yeah, I didn't like that. Too much. He had medallions. He had the fur coat. He had cigars. He had a guy and a girl. What was he going to have next to the lion and tiger, bears? Oh my! I mean, became a draw when became the working man, the blue collar guy. Simple.
With that, though, too, I think at one point Max Muscle was holding up signs. I don't think it was on this show, but he was at one point holding up signs like 10 when DDP would do something great. So it was like, man, they were adding in like I guess he was adding in so many layers and gimmicks to his character. It was too much.
Yeah, of course it was. He didn't, and I would talk to him about it, but it didn't matter. He just knew add more and more and more till he finally, either Nash, I think it was Hall, said to him, "What are you doing? Less is more." So he finally took it from Hall and Nash, or both of them, and he drew money. He wouldn't have drawn it his way.
The funny thing is, I think he was most over when he was just wearing jeans and had the wrap around his stomach.
That's
That was
what I'm
it.
saying.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Less is more. He became the blue collar guy, not the, he'd been selling beanies next.
So Diamond Dell was obviously Kimberly, Max Muscle. Did you ever see anything in him? I mean, obviously a huge guy, but little green, not that great. Did you ever see anything in Max Muscle?
Yeah, if he had gone to the power plant more often, you know what I mean? There were some guys, very nice guy, but there's some guys that thought back in that era, because they were jacked, they didn't need to learn how to work. And I'm not saying he was one of them, but I don't remember him being at the power plant a lot. I could be wrong.
So then the next match, Harlem Heat, Booker T and Stevie Ray with Sister Sherry defeated Bunkhouse Buck and Dick Slater of the Stud Stable with Colonel Robert Parker in a match for the WCW World Tag Team Championships. They win the title in about 16 minutes and 49 seconds. It wasn't that great, not as good as you would think with Buck, Slater, and the Harlem Heat involved. It's just, I don't know. It was okay, but wasn't as good as you thought. It was almost like too much stuff with Sherry and Parker, almost like, I don't know, too much Gaga in that match for it to be as good as it should have been.
Sometimes you put things on paper and you think, oh, this is going to steal the show. And you're right. Too much Gaga, not enough serious heat. Because once they started to get serious heat, they would do something, get a little laugh in the match. Just one of those things that didn't work the way it should have for fabulous workers. The next time out, they would stole the show. But it was just that one time it didn't work. You can
After
never
the
tell.
Yep. And after the match, Colonel Robert Parker and Sister Sherry are kissing. They're continuing to kiss because they were kind of distraction, and they're celebrating. And Parker is celebrating because Sherry won, but his team just lost. So it's really creating some tension with the stud stable that he's kissing the other manager and loving on her, but they just lost, so he shouldn't be happy, but he is.
Right, right.
Did you like that pairing, Parker and Sherry together?
Yes, yes, because Robert's a very entertaining as Colonel Parker. And Sherry was fabulous. Fabulous.
Next matchup is what some people consider maybe Flair's last like true classic match. I don't know about that because you had WrestleMania 24 against Shawn Michaels many years later, but Arn Anderson, shockingly in North Carolina, defeats Ric Flair in a singles match. Obviously, here match goes 22 minutes and 30 seconds. Very, very, very good match. I love this match. Shocked by the finish as Brian Pillman comes out of the crowd, kicks Flair in the back of the head. Arn nails a DDT and Arn gets the victory. Huge, shocking victory as there were so many wrestlers in the crowd because they were shocked that Arn and Flair were actually going to have a match. I mean, there was going to be this huge thing. It was a huge deal. It was actually the match on the show that I was looking forward to. I remember as a fan, even more so than the War Games main event, just because that really had me interested. Flair and Arn are actually going to fight. Like, this is unbelievable. Like, what's going to happen here? Please make up beforehand. Nope. Arn obviously will be the main heel in the process here as Pillman turns heel and cheats. So Arn and Pillman leave and they beat up Flair. Awesome stuff here. What do you think about Arn beating Flair here in 22 minutes, 30 seconds?
The only way you could do it. People were buzzing the next day. To me, that was the main event. And I wanted to give them something to talk about. And you couldn't have two better pros in the ring than Arn and Rick.
I don't know. I love this match. Maybe even more so than others, but I just really love this match. I thought it was a great match between these two. Almost more so like shocking that it was happening. I know like months leading into it, there was a lot of tensions because of Hogan, because of Savage, even because of Vader. They had a 2-on-1 match against Vader, a Clash of the Champions, and they ended up losing because Arn and Flair had a miscommunication. So I mean, it was built up very well, but it's just shocking to see the Horsemen actually having a match here. Very cool stuff.
Right, right, and it worked out perfectly.
Did you have it in your mind that Flair was going to join back up with them and they're going to reform the Horsemen? Was that always in the back of the mind here?
Oh yeah, 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 definitely. It was never. Why would you break them up? One of the most successful groups of all times. Why would you break them up when you have new blood coming in with Pillman?
So Arn and Pillman are together. Eventually, Flair will turn on Sting, who becomes their feud, which is awesome. Love that turn. I love that match, which we have talked about another time about Halloween Havoc. Check that out in the archives. But obviously, Pillman and then Benoit will join the group. It's one of my favorite Horsemen. I love that one. They didn't get a long enough run, but Flair, Arn, Pillman, and Benoit. Love those four together.
I did too. I did too.
Obviously, didn't get a long enough run here, but was everybody shocked just in the back that Flair lost to Arn, or because you would think Flair would get the win here,
Oh,
but it was pretty shocking. Or was everybody's on board with it?
of course, everybody's on board with it. Arn's a great, great performer. I mean, he was the meat of the Four Horsemen. He should have gone over. And it was good to send that kind of message that Arn was the meat of the Four Horsemen. Hello, JP?
Yep.
Okay.
You were saying about Arn? You cut off for a second. You were saying
Yeah,
about Arn,
he was the he was the meat of the Four Horsemen. He should go over.
and as far as obviously Flair, the turn was in. They were getting ready to turn. So just and I love the setup. A great setup and great start to the Four Horsemen being put back together.
Well, we didn't never think they were going to be separated for a long time. It was just it made Arn that much the spotlight on that much more.
So now we have the main event of the evening. Team Hogan, the Hulkamaniacs versus the Dungeon of Doom. Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, Lex Luger, and Sting with Jimmy Hart defeated the Dungeon of Doom, Kamala, Zodiac, the Shark, and Ming with, of course, yourself, the Taskmaster. And they win War Games in about 18 minutes and 45 seconds. Nothing great here, not terrible either. But what do you think about this team? Obviously, Lex Luger ended up replacing Vader, but Hogan, Savage, Luger, and Sting, it's like an all-star team against the Dungeon of Doom of Kamala, Zodiac, of course, who was
Yeah,
Beefcake, Ming, and the Shark.
yeah. It's like the 1927 Yankees playing the Omaha Hammers. I mean, it was for them to shine based upon it. And it was for Hogan to feel comfortable that he was in charge.
So the Hulkmaniacs get the win, but the win would mean that Hulk gets 5 minutes alone with you if he won. So that was like the pre-match step, which was an interesting
Right.
step. What was up with the finish with Zodiac? Like, did it's like the corny thing he would do? Yes, no, yes, no. So yes, he submitted. No, he didn't. Yes, it was. I don't know. It was corny on the finish.
Yeah. I mean, it was a corny character anyway, right?
Yeah, it's awful.
And it was Hulk's friend to have a way out.
Months later, Hulk and him would be together, and it was awfully explained by Hulk. But he goes, "Oh, he was with me the whole time. He
Yeah.
infiltrated the Dungeon of Doom." I was like, "Oh, that made no sense. Like none of that made sense."
No, no.
All his idea, I'm guessing.
Yeah, yeah. All those guys were his guys.
Yeah,
And they were all great guys, and they all drew big money with them in New York, but it was a different time, you know. The one that could have still drawn a lot of money with him was Ming.
yeah. And
Yeah,
he was like the one that, not the captain of the team, but kind of like the captain of the team for this
yeah,
team. Seemed like.
yeah, yeah. He was.
So I don't know. To me, the Dungeon of Doom, like we said, it's like a corny team, corny characters. I don't think the fans, like you said, 95,000, not a lot of people into it. I don't know if they were really buying that team, even being able to beat that super team of the Hulkamaniacs.
They knew they couldn't. It was just for Hulk to get a win. I'm sure it was also to placate some of his friends, and he got what he wanted out of it.
So of course he gets 5 minutes alone with you. He thinks he's going to kick your ass and take you out. Then the giant comes out and absolutely destroys him. He actually does a nice little jump over the top rope to show you, like, holy shit, this guy's 7 foot, whatever he is, has athletic ability, at the yin yang, and ends up quote unquote breaking Hogan's neck. He does the snap of the neck. What do you think about that?
Right.
Was that just a perfect introduction of him, and obviously to save your ass from getting beat by Hogan?
Yeah, I think that was the only thing he could do that he could handle at the time. He looked like he was athletic as hell, and Hogan sold for him because he knew where he was going. So it was good. It was very good, I thought.
So that was kind of like the big thing then. It's like, okay, now the Dungeon of Doom maybe has like a legitimate threat to Hulk because he's beaten all the other guys in the past. There's no way you're beating Hulk. Like this guy seems like an actual threat to Hulk. Like, okay, shit, now the Dungeon of Doom have something here with this giant.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Did you want the
So
announcers to keep
he
saying
got
it's
the
Andre's
giant
son?
over. No, but they were going to say it anyway. I'm sure Hulk buzzed them.
So to me, it seemed like, okay, yeah, the match is what it is. It was okay, nothing bad, but it was really built as an angle for you and Hogan and you to get your comeuppance, and then the Giant obviously comes in and attacks Hogan, and he's wearing what it looks like to be Andre's singlet and stuff. So I mean, obviously,
Right.
he wants Hogan Andre too, basically.
Exactly what we talked about before.
Yep.
Anything that worked in New York, he was going to do again.
I think the big takeaways for me of just Hogan in the match is like they all got the fatigues on and the war paint, and he's got the flag, so he's like as if it's really going to war games. The guys were so over the top, the promos, all the face paint that they were all wearing. I mean, funny stuff. I mean, good stuff for sure.
Yeah, but it was too over the top for where we were going.
Yeah. Yep.
But he was getting feel comfortable, so let him feel comfortable because we're going to ask him to do the biggest turn in the history of the business.
And there's a moment in the match where they tease tension with Luger and Savage, which obviously you guys are going to build up to, as you're really building him up. Like, how the hell can we trust this guy? He's so untrustworthy. He clotheslined Savage in the match, and it's funny. People thought it was a screw up. There's no way it's a screw up. It's almost like he hesitates and then hits Savage. That's
Right,
not. He didn't
right,
screw up. He did that on purpose to make it look like, oh, he hesitated. Oh, wait, but he really hit him. Like it made it look like he's 50-50. Can we trust this guy? Wait, we can't trust this guy.
right, right.
I love
Luger
that.
was
Like
great.
we talked
Yeah,
about that before. I just love that character because it's like, holy shit, Luger, he's such an asshole, but Sting likes him. Like Sting trusts him, like, but he's such an asshole.
yeah, yeah.
So, so what do you think overall of the show?
Uh, in the middle because of Arn and Rick and because of Pillman. Uh, Headed towards down because the main event was not what it should have been, but it got a lot accomplished.
Hey, they say WCW didn't create new stars except for Goldberg. What about the Giant? He was booked way better in WCW than it was in WWF. I mean, Vince ruined him right off the bat. He wasn't really the same ever since.
Right,
But WCW created him, made him a huge star.
right, right.
So
Well,
let's.
he
Oh,
worked
sorry.
hard in it too.
Yeah, I just think that the Giant was definitely a big, big star for WCW that was created by WCW, and Vince didn't book him as well. But let's head towards the plugs. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Two Man Power Trip. Check out the website, tmptempire.com. And of course, Pro Wrestling Tees, prowrestlingtees.com. Visit the Kevin Sullivan store. You could, of course, follow Kevin on Instagram at Taskmaster Talks. And then, of course, you could follow me on Patreon, patreon.com/TMPT Empire. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in. We'll see you right back here next week for a little Taskmaster Talks with Kevin Sullivan. We'll see you next week, folks.